Okay, we've got everybody back, and note for the record that our city attorney, Susan Early, has joined us on the dais. And we're going to go ahead and commence this special workshop to discuss 4 COP SRX licenses, closing restaurants with SRX licenses at 12 midnight, and improving the atmosphere and safety environment for our downtown at midnight. What I'd like to do, I know those of you in the audience, this is not going to be, we're not going to seek public comment tonight. There's these packages available at the door. The last page has places that you can write in. We're going to work tonight on trying to determine what, if any, changes we're going to modify or modifications we're going to make to the alcohol ordinance. If we decide to move forward with that, there will be 2 readings of the ordinance. Public comment will be welcome at both, just so you know. But in that handout that you've got on the back, there's an opportunity for you to write down comments if you'd like to turn those into the clerk. They'll be in the record and available to the public. Okay, with that, Madam Attorney, I'm going to ask you to talk about our options.
Okay. So the last time we met, we talked about. Okay, last time we met, we talked about what options we had in connection with the alcohol-related problems in our city, and with the focus on the safety concerns. So I came up with, and you have in front of you, 5 different options. Option number 1 is to simply repeal 4-2, which is our alcohol code provision that allows alcohol establishments to stay open past midnight. If we did not have that in our code, then alcohol establishments would be closed at midnight by state law. Option number 2 is to repeal 4-2 only as to SRX licenses, and those are the licenses that are restaurant licenses. And under that option, then the COP licenses, which there are only 12 in this city, would remain open. That would limit the number of alcohol establishments that could be open until 2 a.m. And then the restaurants would all have to close at midnight, consistent with state law. So you would have a tiered option. And law enforcement could explain more about how that tiered option of the midnight closing for restaurants would work in our community. As I understand, at 2 a.m., that's when all the bars and the restaurants close, and then all the drinkers at that point are out in the streets and creating public safety concerns. Option number 3 was to repeal 4-2 as to restaurants only in the CBD area. We discussed that among ourselves, and I will tell you that one of the concerns we had, I was reminded by staff that we previously had problems of SRX licenses outside of the CBD. You may remember that, Bruce. In fact, we had a shooting in one of those restaurants. Again, these restaurants that are causing the problem, as my understanding, are restaurants that we call restaurants in name only. They claim to be selling 51% food, which is what their licenses require, but it appears that they are not. So option number 4 is to grandfather in the current SRXs, but to close any new SRXs at midnight. And to also revise 4-2 to have stricter requirements, such as to require all bars and SRX alcohol establishments to have security cameras at the entrances and exits. And if there are violations, that you can relate back to those alcohol establishments, that they could be issued a violation, and that law enforcement, after they issued one violation, we could bring them before the special magistrate and after notice and an opportunity to be heard, they could lose their permit to stay open until 2 a.m. And then the last option is just to revise our current statute 4-2 to strengthen it, to require things like training, security cameras, and stricter enforcement proceedings, that if there are 2 violations within 365 days, or 2 violations period, they could lose their ability to stay open past midnight.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it. I think this is kind of an open format, but what I like to do is just see comment from each of the council members to see if there's a common direction that we can move toward. I will say before we start discussion that option number 4 was a result of a meeting that I had with the city manager, city attorney, our police chief, and I think a couple of our commanders were there as well. I tend to favor that option, number 4. Basically what it would do is provide a grandfather for everybody that currently has an SRX-4 COP, and then anybody that would register as a new restaurant, or if any previous restaurant were to change ownership or name or anything of that nature, they automatically revert to midnight. Midnight would be in any new restaurant as well. I think I might have said that already. Grandfathering the other restaurants so that if they, our bad actors tend to be our bad actors. And if we expand the period of eligibility or the qualification of the notice of failure to meet the requirements to 1 year instead of 90 days, then it would provide a burden for them to keep it under control and follow the rules the way they're supposed to be followed. But it also gives those we do have some 4 COP SRX licenses in the CBD that have had no infractions. And this would be, in my opinion, the fairest way to move forward. So that being said, I'm seeking comments from the others. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a question for our city attorney on the number 4 option, referring to requirements for security cameras. Would that be only for SRX, or can we make that for all licensed establishments that sell alcohol in this city?
You could make it a requirement for all licensed establishments that sell alcohol as part of the privilege to be able to be open till 2 a.m. The better question is, could we make that a requirement for the new restaurants? And I would deter you from doing that, because my understanding is that if you were to go with option 4, the hope would be that this would solve the public safety crisis that we have. And so any alcohol establishments that are staying open until 2 a.m., if they have cameras, you can get the information. And we would also require, as a part of the privilege, to have that extended permit that the establishments agree to share with the city. Any footage that they have, they'd be required to maintain the recordings for 45 days, so that we could get that information.
Okay, I think we're saying the same thing, but I'm not sure. What I'm asking is, can we put into our ordinance that this doesn't apply only to SRX, it applies to every alcohol establishment, whether they're one of the legacy license or not. They have to get the same kind of security cameras and keep them for the same period of time, that sort of thing.
Yes.
With that, I think number 4 for me is our best option.
Okay. Mr. Blunt.
One of my additional concerns is I like number 4, but we just had the British Navy here. And to me, when you know there's going to be 2,000 people we welcome them, coming to our beach and we're not prepared for it, then there was, to me, to have these people arrested lays back on the establishments that they were allowed to get it out of control. The one restaurant said, we have security every night of the week. When you have that many people come from a foreign country and they've been on shift forever doing exercises, and you've been in the Navy, and I'm married to have my family's in the Navy. I mean, they go out to sea a long time. When they get to shore, they like to enjoy themselves.
Blow off steam, yeah.
And my point is, I wonder if security cameras are enough that after 2 a.m. or whatever, they should actually have security people that when somebody is out of line and out of order, the camera's not going to get them out of there, but certainly the security people would be able to. That's my only hang-up. I was just a little bit distraught of, I don't know how many arrests there were with the Navy, but
6 arrests.
whatever it was too many.
Right. I will say that I think that was a learning experience for a lot of us. You know, we have a new CO, relatively new CO of the Mayport Naval Station, Captain David Young, and we don't have the same relationship that I had with Wes McCoy, the previous. He would call me anytime something would come up, and we just had a drop in communication. I don't think we were prepared. I know the police department sent representatives out to the ship, and the second night was relatively peaceful. But in the future, I can assure you, for the ships, I'll work with the police department, but we'll work through the naval station to request shore patrol. So there's additional law enforcement from the military that would be there to handle the military. And, you know, I hate to see, 6 British sailors going to jail. They're close allies to us, and it's kind of embarrassing that it happened at all. But we did the right thing by getting control. I think if we had the shore patrol there and shore patrol vans, they could just get the people who were having a little bit too much fun, put them in the van and take them back to the ship. And that's
One thing I like what you said is the cooperation between the two, but again, dating myself, when I grew up during World War II, MPs were all over the place. I mean, we really didn't need the police that much. They were controlling their sailors, but we don't have that many security in the Navy anymore, do we?
Well, there's every command when you deploy and you have a port visit, there's a certain number of shore patrol that are required to go out for X number of people on the pier. So for maybe 2 shore patrol for every 1,000 as an example, or every 500 or whatever the case may be. And that remains in effect. And typically the Navy will police their own overseas so that they don't have to go into a foreign jail and get underway the next day. So I think that there's a way for us to get a handle on the influx of visitors from foreign navies, and I think this was a good experience for us to make sure it doesn't happen again. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor, and it has happened before. I can state categorically that it's happened on numerous occasions when foreign sailors show up here, and I guess I agree with everything that has been said, with one additional thing. The city of Jacksonville Beach is not the one selling the alcohol. Private locations, alcohol establishments are the ones that are selling it, and it is their responsibility by state law to ensure that they don't overserve to their customers.
Right.
And possibly one of the things that might be of some assistance, I think our fire chief is gone, but possibly when we know in advance that we're going to have an influx of sailors coming in, that we get our fire marshal out and take a look at what's the maximum number of people in there and make sure that those kinds of things are enforced. But it has to go back to the people who own that establishment, who have the alcohol license, to ensure that they don't overserve and they don't let the place get so crowded that we have the kind of situations that we're dealing with here.
Good point. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Hoffman, you have anything to add?
Is this all we're discussing today? Just picking basically one of the 5? Okay. I kind of thought we had already picked the direction at the last briefing that I think you had already had your meeting where you came up with the number 4 option.
The number 4, right.
So we're just kind of confirming that we still all want to head that direction?
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, my position is the same. I think that's, I wish we didn't have to do something like this, but I think that that's an opportunity to be more fair, especially to the good actors. So at this point, I would like to see what are the details of what this actually looks like. And my apology, I guess in my brain I got a little further ahead thinking that that's what we would talk about today. But the details, the legalities, we've got to, I don't know, we don't have to really consider the expense, but I think we do need to recognize that something like security cameras, maintaining all of that footage, where do they go, is there sound, is there not sound? There's a lot of questions just in that one issue that I think we're going to have to consider, not the least of which is the expense to our businesses. So I would say I still feel like 4 is the best option of, really, again, no good options. We don't want to have to be having this conversation, but that's where I would lean at this point.
Okay, thank you. And for clarification, when we had that discussion, it wasn't in a public workshop, it was in a briefing. So we did this to put it out in the public before. Now, again, if we agree to move forward with option 4, the chief and the city manager and city attorney will work to put the legal pieces together and then bring it to us. And as I said earlier, it will go before 2 readings as an ordinance modification to the downtown alcohol ordinance.
So we won't be workshopping it then. Once it's drafted, you plan to just put it right in front of us without a workshop?
Well, I think the thing to do would be get it to each of you and see if there's any reason for us to have a workshop.
Okay.
Because I think it'd be pretty self-explanatory when we read through it. But I'm certainly open to another workshop if that's what.
Well, we'll see. That's fine with me. We just want to see what comes out and go from there.
Yep, and the reason we did it tonight, obviously, is we were doing a second reading, so we just did this quickly to get it in the public, and then we'll bring a more specific plan forward and have everybody look at it and see if you have any issues that you want to address. If not, then we'll make it the first reading of a modification to the amendment or to the ordinance. Okay, anything else?
Can I just speak, you mentioned the security cameras. That idea actually came from an ordinance in Daytona Beach. They passed an ordinance similar to this in 2016, and they require security cameras, and I thought it was one tool that may be available to us.
I think the thing to keep in mind too is I don't believe any of us believe that this is going to be the one solution to solve all the problems. I think it's a positive step in the right direction. I also believe that if it works, we can evaluate our additional councils down the line can look at modifying it if they feel it's appropriate. But I think based on some of the things that have happened in our downtown in the last few months, it's become pretty clear, and all of us saw the video that was the police have put together about what our downtown looks like after midnight on the weekends. We have a moral obligation to do something to get this under control. So unless there's any other comments, questions, we'll go ahead and move forward. City attorney and city manager and the chief or his representative, I'd ask you to start putting this together and move with appropriate haste so that we're getting this done and not putting it on the back burner. And we'll keep the council and the public current with our progress so that everybody knows what to expect. Okay, anything else from anybody in the dais? That's it. Meeting adjourned. Have a good night. Thanks for being here.